The AI that created chapter summaries on Spotify screwed up last week and called Nicole vampire director Nicole de Meneses. Nicole, just to set the record straight, you are directing a vampire movie and are not an actual vampire.
That's correct, Eric. But, I would like to work with some real-life vampires one day. But they are quite demanding. They want their own coffin in their trailer, and they only want to work at night. So it makes for a hard production shoot. What are you going to do?
Nicole, you refuse our reasonable demands. Let's eat egg.
Finger licking good. Oh, I'm Eric Trommater.
I'm Erin Brown.
I'm Nicole de Meneses.
I'm Jennifer Trujillo. And this is World Cinema History.
You're not afraid of the night. If you're not afraid of death, then you have nothing to fear. Until you meet one of them. Because vampires don't just kill you all at once. They terrify you forever. Fool that! Weird, dark, afraid for daylight. Rated R.
Now playing at a theater near you.
Eric, you okay over there?
Oh, yeah, I'll be fine. In fact, according to the movie that I just watched, all I need is a 1-pint blood transfusion, and I'll be cured for good. Before we start, a bit of a PSA. This film is very much from the 1980s and has all the hallmarks of that wild and lawless decade. Children smoking, Richard Marx and Tangerine Dream on the soundtrack, and obviously, kids, don't smoke. And for God's sakes, don't listen to Richard Marx, but most importantly, for all the young men out there, if you're giving a woman a ride home, do not drive her to the middle of nowhere and then say you'll only give her a ride home if she kisses you. Seriously, kids, do not try this at home. Vampires aren't real. 2 words that are, though, begin with the letters S and A and end with a prison sentence. That's very real. And that was a PSA from World Cinema History. Nicole, this was your pick for this week. Tell us what we need to know about 1987's Near Dark.
I do love this movie just from a cinematic standpoint. Katherine Bigalow set out to make a Western, and throwing in some vampires, yes, please. There's actually a really sweet love story, even though it does get a little cheesy. I love how gritty and violent this film is, and it's funny. These vampires, they're not the gothic, serene, and beautiful vampires. They're gritty, grimy, southern, a little racist, but somehow you're rooting for this fringe family to kind of survive and thrive together, even though they do terrible, terrible things. You talked a little bit about our main character, Caleb. He's a bit of a douche in the beginning, but he does go on a nice little arc and journey of lusting after this beautiful, mysterious girl and actually developing real feelings for her and putting his family first. I rooted for Caleb. I rooted for him and May, but at the same time, I also was fascinated with these terrible vampires who were not conforming to society's rules. And so it just has a special place in my heart. It came out around the same time as Lost Boys, which was way more family focused and friendly. And you brought up the cigarette smoking and Tangerine Dream, but the product placement of that wonderful Coca-Cola. You're going to stay up late and watch this movie on a dark night and have a nice ice cold Coca-Cola. This movie just has a soft spot in my heart. I discovered it on TV like a lot of people. I'm like, what is this? And over the years, I revisit it and watch it often, and I think it's still a beautiful and haunting movie.
Thanks, Nicole. Jennifer, this was your first viewing, and Nicole was joking last week that she's been trying to get you to watch this movie for a very, very long time. What do you have to say to Nicole for recommending this film to you?
It's true. I realized when I went to look at the link that I had made it partially through this movie. It looks like multiple times, but had not finished it. So it was my first complete watching that I'm aware of. I had to make it all the way through and start thinking about it and learning more about it, I think, to understand more of why it was Nicole's favorite. I will say in the first sub 30 minutes with Caleb, that character being such gross, Me Too, predatory, icky in lots of ways. And the pacing, I was like...
We prefer the word millennial. I'm sorry, that is our chosen pronoun. Thank you very much. I want to correct myself. I am technically Generation X. I was 17 when this film came out, so I actually probably Caleb's age at the time. Would not have found anything wrong with that in 1987. negative thing to say about 1987 or positive thing to say about today that we can look back?
And that we know better, do better, hopefully.
Yeah, that's important. I think it's definitely a positive thing that we can see that as being as gross and predatory.
It's very 80s. It's very dark. The whole connection with Katherine Bigalow and a female director and stepping into this genre and being given this chance, which to my understanding and learning, I didn't know before the last 24 hours that there was pretty much a vampire gun to her head. Some of the stories say, we'll look at the dailies on the first day, the producers, and if they're not good, we're firing you. But she had, if I remember right, that they'd written the script on spec, and she wanted to be the director, and they were like, no, you shouldn't be the director, and they fought for it. So I get that whole part of a female director getting to be in Western and horror and action and dipping into this world into so many ways, which I'm sure we'll get into. So that part makes sense to me, and then that Katherine Bigelow's the first female director to win an award, and then later on winning it. I don't even should get on all that, but just it was fascinating that the whole dipping into the James Cameron role and then winning against that is amazing. And so all that part in the empowerment of a female director, even on the heels of your month of female directors, I thought, wow, this is all lining up. You all are very clever, Eric and Nicole and everybody, for planning this, because it makes a lot of sense. And just like me having a journey going through watching this, our character Caleb had a journey through watching this. So there was, another Willy Loman everyman who's faced with moral choices and goes on a journey that they pull us along with, as films do. So there was definitely a journey and an arc, and lots of cool things about this movie and lots of strange things about this movie. It was very mixed. But I am glad I got to watch it, and I'm grateful that I'm here to get to talk about it.
Thanks, Jennifer. Erin, we're really good friends, I think. And as your really good friend, two genres that I don't associate with Erin Brown are the Western and the vampire horror film.
No, I like a good Western. A good Western. I think it depends on a lot of stuff with a Western. And with vampire films, that's not really my thing, but I did like this. This was pretty cool. I mean, it took a bit to get into it because, yeah, Caleb was gross. He was just icky. Also, I was like, hey, it's that guy from Heroes. Because, of course, that's the first thing I thought. Although one thing that I did notice that I thought was really cool at the beginning when he meets May and is like all hitting on her, and I thought it was gross. I thought he was like really creepy, but the whole predatory vibe kind of switched. She seemed to sort of take over when she asked to go in his truck with him. I thought that was a really interesting development. That's why I'm like, okay, I need to see what's going to happen here. And she wouldn't have turned him if he hadn't been a jerk. Although she probably would have just eaten him.
I think that she's out for a snack. She's kind of hunting too. They're both predators. He just doesn't see her as one.
Right.
And I don't mind. He's a cowboy that needs to learn a lesson, and he really learns the hard way. So I don't mind the setup.
You're not wrong. He definitely has to learn, and he definitely does learn. It still gave me an ick vibe, but over the course of the film, that went away because, as you said, he had to learn this lesson. So during the course of his journey, he got better. I didn't really care a lot about the love story, but I typically don't, so that's just on me. What I really liked was the creepy vampire family. Specifically, Bill Paxton was delightfully psychotic, and Lance Henriksen is one creepy-looking bastard, and they really used that to their advantage in this to make him really unsettling. I loved that. Didn't care for the kid character, but I understand why he's there now, because they had to bring Caleb's family into it somehow. So, yeah, I thought it was great. Honestly, I really enjoyed that.
The kid character, though, that backstory is so tragic and upsetting in that, like, he turned May. He also is a worse predator in that the mind of a older male is hunting children because he's so lonely, is such a more sinister character. And he's a more despicable character out of all of them in my eyes. But it's the packaging of the creepy little kid that is disarming. But I when you really think about his storyline, it's really it's upsetting how he targets the sister.
It is. It's really creepy. And when you first see him kill that guy, it's because he pretended that he'd been in a bike wreck and was just laying there like he was hurt. And the guy comes to help him and he just kills him. It's like, that's horrible.
Well, he turned May by pretending he needed help with his fifth grade homework.
Yeah.
It is the creepiest trope in movies, I think, is the old man trapped in the child's body trope.
Yeah.
When it's done well. It is.
Yeah.
It's just so incredibly disturbing. They made fun of it on the TV show version of What We Do in the Shadows. Who was it? Accidentally turned the baby into a, and they're stuck with a pooping, peeing, money sucking machine for eternity because it's going to be a baby for the
That's yeah. And they did it in the movie too with the two little girl vampires that were hunting pedophiles. If you're going to do that, that's how you do it. You get people that deserve it.
Well, also these vampires, they're petty thieves and outlaws. Like, so in terms of the Western, they're very much like they're living day to day. And like, even as the movie progresses, they're constantly trying to outrun the sun. Instead of like a wagon, they have like the RV or whatever van that they can blacken up. They're poor vampires. And so that's a different, like, subverting the trope of like the rich gothic, elegant vampire, and that they are, dirty and struggling day to day.
Which is one of the things I really like about this film. But I do think we're giving Eric Red, who wrote the original screenplay, a bit too much credit when we're saying Caleb has a character arc. And based on Red's other works, he is really, really good, like he did in The Hitcher, of just putting smart-ass dialogue together and having it come out of the mouth of likable but dumb people. That is his talent. This screenplay, I think, is, I'm not saying a weak element of this, because I think this is a very good film, but the screenplay of this is just something that was able to hang the talent, I thought, of what Bigalow does with this film. And when you find out, so even the little explanations for them, the constantly outrunning the sun with the tinfoil and the spray paint, all of that actually came out of the actor's improvisation and wasn't actually in Red's original script. You
Right.
realize what he's created is something where the best explanation of, like, why are you staying so close to dawn in the first place, is they're stupid. And what Bigalow and the cast does is made me buy it.
I think the cast is very talented, and they brought their own interpretations of their characters. Bill Paxton, Severen, he improvised several scenes, especially within the bar scene, and also Jesse's backstory. The script is really sparse, but when you get that, yeah, I fought for the South. We lost. Like, we're getting a lot in like maybe one or two sentences from him.
Or remember that fire we started in Chicago?
Yeah.
And all of that. What was a couple of the lines that you just knew just from having watched Bill Paxton over the years, we had to have been like, I'm going to knock your tonsils out of your asshole. That's a Bill Paxton. He improv that. You know that. Just from having seen him over the years. I mean, that's a Bill Paxton. That wasn't an Eric Red.
His personality makes this despicable character likable. He like when he targets the young girls in the car, it's just, he's somebody who thrives on chaos and relishes it. And like, I wouldn't say they're dumb. I think they're reckless, and they're bored. They crave chaos. And so they are, there's an addiction to them, disturbing and chasing a thrill. So I wouldn't say they're dumb. I'd say they're reckless.
What are you going to do if you've got eternity to live? You're going to get bored, and you're going to do things that look stupid, but it's really just to get something new in your life,
Okay, bored is once stretching it so that the dawn that will turn you into a burnt rump roast. Dumb is every night taking everything all the way up to the limit where dawn is going to break and you have to having to hide and spray paint and tinfoil. That is not a knock against either the script or the movie. I think it sets that up very, very well. I bought the rest of this plot, so I wasn't sitting here thinking, well, this and this and this and this doesn't make sense, except the ending, which we'll get to, because I completely bought into that. Well, these guys, they're very rural, they're very reckless, and they're not particularly bright. I'm not going to sit there and pick this film apart, but the other reason I don't think I'd do that is because it is such a great excuse to see the painterly, like, beautiful compositions that are created in this combination of the Western and the horror genre, the night desert scenes, the sun as a menace, the way she uses the telephoto to magnify the sun rising every dawn and the way it's chasing them through all the scenes. And for me, I think one of the reasons I don't pick this apart is because I wouldn't be able to enjoy those type of things had the film not been made, and the film wouldn't. And of course, if all of these things don't happen, all the little coincidences, all of the things that we normally pick apart in a movie, the movie can't happen.
But remember, too, Caleb sabotages them a couple times. Where, like, they would have been fine if he hadn't let the guy go. Or there's a couple of times where it's like, oh, if they just didn't have him hanging around, they would have had a good night and could have slept in at the new hotel and been fine. But because of him letting that guy go, it drives the cops to the hotel, and they have to have a shootout. And yeah, he proves himself by getting the van to them in time, but he caused the problem. So Caleb is the new factor that causes the discomfort and more chaos in their band of misfits.
That's even true from the beginning. Like, they're living in a mobile camper. So they have a mobile darkened home. And because of the connection with May and May not killing him and not even partially turning him, causes the chaos of them ending up losing the camper, right? That it's been ID'd and they're pursuing it and they have to get rid of it. So that relationship with May and Caleb changes the security bubble that they were the pattern they were living in for a while that was secure. And they've tried other things, like he'd been at that hotel. They mentioned that, how many 50 years earlier, but they were in a more stable loop. Another point I wanted to make earlier, Erin, I don't even know if you finished your thoughts on the original of the film, but you were talking about, I agree that Caleb was a total predator, but we saw how each of them hunted and preyed, and May's version of hunting or preying is using her feminine wiles, and she's reeling him in, at the beginning of the film with the ice cream cone, which is like the proverbial symbol of things, and then bringing him into the car. But that's her way. I mean, you watch her doing it with other people, her feminine power, and she's more passive than the others. She's still very willing to kill, and she tries very hard to coax and teach Caleb to figure out his way of how he's going to kill.
And that's actually some interesting dialogue there. He asked for a bite of her cone. He said, bite. He said, I would die for an ice cream cone. Die? I thought that was actually really, really good for this kind of pixie dream girl May character. And then when she goes out and she's talking about the brightness of the night and the star that's the light's a billion years away, and by the time the light reaches, she'll still be here, and and that's why you've never met a girl like me. In a very short amount of time, you really create this likable, but in my mind, dumb May character, which she has to be for the plot to go by, but she has to be very, very likable, because you have to be cool with her doing some pretty shady shit, because it is a slower moving film for the first half hour or so.
I was going to say, I'd follow May. I'd be chasing after May too. I mean, I think a lot of the actors do a lot of the heavy lifting with the visuals of, they have to say so much with their physicality. And so if we're going to categorize Caleb as kind of like this young, dumb guy, he's succumbing to his shallow vices, she's a great conduit for that. You've already said, Eric, that the script is kind of sparse, and I've said it as well. I think these actors did a lot of heavy lifting, and then Katherine Bigelow's direction, elevated the movie, elevated the subject matter.
I don't think of May as being dumb. She's conniving in that whole, she's seducing him. She's pulling him in. It's funny. The vampire jokes, the references you made were funny. She was telling him right to his face what she was, and enjoying that he wasn't quite getting it, but he couldn't help himself by like a moth drawn to a flame. She knows she has that power, and she does it with anything. And I did even realize, so much so, I agree, Nicole, that I think the actor, is it Jenny Wright, did such an amazing job of being this 80s westerny goth vampire vixen that I had read that she kept getting typecast into that type of role, and she was frustrated, and that she had stepped away from making films because she couldn't take it anymore. She was like, I had this great role where she got to be a vixen and seemingly vapid or stupid, but she wasn't. I mean, I didn't think that character was dumb at all.
No, but she's not dumb. There's a major plot hole in this, which is, why does she not know exactly what time it is every moment that it's dark and how long it's going to be before when she's been a vampire for 4 years?
Oh,
So
I thought that was part of the whole thing.
You have to buy into the fact that these aren't your Bram Stoker's brilliant manipulating rich count. These are your high school dropout vampires. These are these are your cousins Mary vampires for this plot to work, which is fine because it sells it so well.
I would push back because I think it's about being reckless. Here's someone who there's a potential of a partner here. She sees somebody in Caleb that might be trainable. Like, he's rough around the edges, but there might be an equal partner, and she would have to show him the ropes. But she stays out all night, almost to the point of danger for her, because she's reckless, because they are in an isolated kind of place where there aren't that many options for people. And so I still go back to it's reckless. It's not stupid. I think she's more calculating and is smarter than that.
I agree with that. I think so too. I think she's that way, and there is this hook of romance and want and drive. Like, she has the lust for him, like he has a lust for her.
Yeah, me too. I agree. I think that she knows exactly what she's doing, and it's part of the thrill of, they can't die unless this thing happens. So she's staying out late just for the thrill, and also adding some urgency to getting him to take her home, so maybe she can kill him there.
I feel like the film has a whole thread of want a romantic partner, a life partner, a familial partner, or a familiar partner, even if it goes from being forced into being, you know what I mean? They're pairing up. Homer loses his pairing in May as we go along, which is where that whole twisted part, which we can get to, of him going after Caleb's sister as a child that might match to him, and he can finally have a partner close to his physical age, but the whole weird stuff. But then also in a vindictive hunting. But they all have sort of their pairing of someone they can snuggle up with when they're sleeping during the day, and hunt with if they want, or ride with. And there's that line of that she wants someone, and she might have found someone who might be trainable, to what Nicole said. Anyways, I think she's calculated, and I think I agree with the recklessness.
There's also a kind of an interesting power dynamic. Like, Caleb never rises to being her equal. He submits to her several times, where he's just unwilling to cross a certain violent line. But in terms of a sexual power dynamic, her feeding him and him on his knees submitting, I think is an interesting power dynamic, and it's an interesting visual in the film.
It's definitely an interesting visual in the film. I mean, they use it multiple times, and when he crawls back up to her and crawls back up and, puts his face even in her crotch and is swaddled, and then she feeds him while the music is pumping and the heartbeat is pumping, and then those oil rigs are pumping behind. It's an incredible symbol of all of that, I thought, and a beautiful image.
I couldn't get the eroticism of it now. When I saw this at a drive-in theater when I was 17, I found that scene extremely erotic. Now at 55, those are children that I'm watching on screen. And what a drag it is getting old, because of course I didn't see it. But what I did see is very interesting, which is, why couldn't he just also feed on the same truck driver? The reason is because, of course, May literally had to feed her out of feed him out of her hand
Multiple times
to create the relationship dynamic that we needed. And again, a lot of that, I think, is in how the shots are framed, not in how the scenes are written. As a screenplay, if you were to read this film, I don't think it would have the impact that it does. I really think this is a film that is about the ensemble cast, the acting, the performances, and the wonderful merger of the Western genre and the horror genre through a director and a director of photography who know their shit. Because I didn't realize it until this viewing, but I've seen this 4 or 5 times since I saw it back in 1987. It's this cast. Of course, Henriksen, Bill Paxton, and Jenette Goldstein had all worked together the year before on Aliens. Paxton maybe to some extent is playing a version of his Aliens role, the smart-ass guy, but I don't think there's any connection. Henriksen is playing a completely different character, and what I really like is he's already got the very distinguished lined face, and then when they added the makeup scars, really take advantage of what a just kind of a beautiful aged before its time face that he has. And then I didn't actually even recognize Jenette Goldstein as Diamondback in this from her role in Aliens. It is something completely different from anything that I'd seen her in. But there is something about the rapport that these people built up transfers onto the screen, and so as a viewer felt like I was watching one of these chosen families. And it had this family dynamic. And I think a lot of that had to do with the interaction between the actors, not in anything that is actually said dialogue-wise. And I think the best films do that, as opposed to explicitly having characters say, "You're my family. I have a family, but I choose you as my family," allowing you to feel that in the actual dynamic between the people on screen.
A lot of these things are owed to the choices Katherine Bigalow made as a director on the project. I mean, she was helped choosing these actors that were packaged from Aliens, but she also put them in boot camp situations. She had them, and that might have been also the seasoned producers that work with her, but the season producers say the script got funded because she was so prepared, she was so ready on her research, because her background as an artist and a trained artist, scholarship to art school, scholarship to film school. She storyboarded the film and the visuals. The gentleman that's the cinematographer,
Adam Greenberg,
who's an incredible cinematographer, let's be clear, but he said he was thrilled with the storyboard and her vision, and that it was very clear off of the script that had come and was really pulled into it. He's an incredible cinematographer. He's got a great legacy in history, and he supposedly was like the indie and the high budget indie, not a big cinematographer at the time when he was pulled into this project, but he saw her visuals on the storyboards and saw how easily it was going to be to bring them to life and working with her. They also talked about how easy it was for them to get investors and financing because she was so prepared in her history and her storyboarding. And then to the actors, she put them through a boot camp. She knew they were a pack, sure, whether they were fed to her or she chose them. She then chose to work with them, allowed them to develop their characters on their own. She put them through a boot camp with arms, gun handling. She put them through boot camp where they timed them, darkening out the cars and rooms. They started doing that. They did that for a week of every day, timing themselves, darkening out windows with different things that she fed them and things that they came up with. And I think they claim they got it down from under minutes into like 32 seconds of darkening out a car. Anyways, I think there's some credit to her as a director. Like, Katherine was given this opportunity. She knew it was an opportunity. She knew it was an opportunity with a gun to her head. And much like the characters in the film, she wasn't reckless. She might have been a little reckless, but she was deliberate. She was calculated in what she was going to do to get this done. Some of the actors in interviews I saw said that it was amazing to work with a female director and that she wasn't so bossy and top down, but she listened to suggestions. And if they had good ideas or input or feedback, she fed that and nurtured it, like May nurturing them, Caleb. And if not, she was gentle in her, no, let's try a different direction kind of thing. And she allowed them to improv. Like, she was thrilled that, I guess, Lance Henriksen drove all the way to set in character in his costume.
I love the story of him trying out. He'd gotten his nails done and broke them off with a pair of pliers, and he improved his own makeup and tried it on his way out to set, picked up a hitchhiker and tried his character out, handed him the stuff to roll a cigarette. Roll me a cigarette, and the hitchhiker's all nervous, and then he hands him the cigarette. And he's like, "Did you call that a cigarette?" Throws it out the window, and then just growls at him. And the hitchhiker opened up the door while the car was moving and rolled away. I just love that story. And that is Lance Henriksen. He loved doing that. I can't remember what film it was, but apparently he actually spent more on his own makeup for a film than the production budget had, because he didn't like what the makeup people were doing for his character, and he would stay in character for the entire shoot. Wonderfully dedicated actor.
Well, all the actors were so excited for this movie, and they brought that level of excitement to their characters. I just wanted to say, kind of piggyback off of what Jen was talking about, she made the opportunity. It wasn't that it was given to her, or even with a gun to her head, like that they could take it away, but she co-wrote the script. This was a project, one of her projects from the beginning, and it was focused on making an opportunity for herself, because at the time, those opportunities were few and far between. And I think even today, people are reluctant to write their own stories. They're waiting for someone to gift them a story. And so the idea that this was a project that she was involved with from the very conception, I think is important in how she was able to then eventually direct it.
And this was a risky production in terms of how difficult it is to film in the desert, how difficult it is to film at night, the amount of lighting that you need. She had been an assistant to Milos Forman, and so I think she'd learned on the job in that way. But there was a lot of risk that went into this as your first big budget film. She had obviously done what was the Willem Dafoe movie she did before this?
I think it's called The Loveless, the biker movie.
The Loveless, yeah, which was relatively low budget compared to this. It was a few $100,000, whereas this was had a $3.5 million budget, which in 1987 money was still pretty good, But she was taking a lot of risks. And in combining two genres you don't quite normally see, and people point out that there was a Jesse James versus Dracula, and there was some other vampire western in the 19. Nobody ever saw them. Nobody ever heard of them, and they never played in a first run theater. She was inventing a new genre. You aren't going to open a film history book and see, and then in 1964, Jesse James versus Dracula. No, those films were produced as B-movie jokes. This was a serious film. She was breaking new ground.
I love the shot of Caleb on a horse riding to save his sister. Like he's becoming the hero in the end, and that's such a striking shot. And then, because the horse senses danger, kicks him off. But before that, it's just a beautiful way to introduce that he's grown and he knows what he's willing to fight for.
Or the shot where he's carrying his sister, that shot with the moving telephoto lens, the menace of the sun rising behind him. That reminded me of the Anthony Mann, Jimmy Stewart Westerns back from the 1950s, and how he would shoot the telephoto lens in order to take that desert background and flatten it against the screen and make the horizon super flat, and so you really felt the immediacy of the danger that the character's in, and where it almost felt like the night itself is going to consume you, that it's chasing you, not just the vampires. Like I said, the first half hour of this film, a bit slow moving, but you need that. You need to set up these characters. So the first half hour is a little bit slow moving, but necessary, and then of course, the last hour of this film just flies by. But there are three sequences that are just outstanding in this film, just as 80s action that would stand with Terminator, that would stand with Predator, that would stand with any of your big Die Hard, any of your big 80s action blockbusters. And one is the kind of centerpiece, the bar sequence. The second is the shootout at the motel, which, again, harkens back, I think, to the Sam Peckinpah type westerns, where you see the bullets ricocheting off the wall, tearing the wall up, and that dreaded sunlight that has become almost the antagonist of this film, breaking in and them having to hide from, just absolutely epically excellently done. And the third is that final showdown. And all three are the height of, I think, 80s action without having to have been on a very large budget.
I was going to say, with the shootout in the hotel, like, it made me think of Blood Simple. And I know Blood Simple came out a couple years before, but like it's just on a grander scale, the excess of bullets. And I love the idea that the bullets aren't hurting them, but the bullet holes with the sun piercing through does. And it's just such a striking sequence. And I don't think they, when you think about practical effects that went into it, like, they're not on a soundstage somewhere. Like, they had, limitations of the places that they were at, and they had built these things. So they really only got maybe one or two shots at it to capture it. And it's amazing what they did capture.
I like the concept of the sun as being an antagonist because, like, it's sunlight. We're all, we need it to survive. It's relatively benign unless you've got really pale skin like I do and sunburn in 10 minutes. But it's so everyday, you don't even pay attention to it existing, and this makes you afraid of it. Kind of like how in Tremors, just the ground being solid, you couldn't take that for granted anymore. There could be something that comes up and gets you. When something as benign as that and is everyday and we don't even think about it becomes the enemy, that's a pretty wild concept.
Back to that final showdown, I think that's excellently done. Yes, it's a cowboy movie cliche, but it's a cliche for good reason. It's a very satisfying way to end a film, number one. And number two, when it's well done, the way it is done, well done here, it is extremely satisfying. The only reason why I would say, oh, well, that is a cliche, is if I'm watching a film where it's not well done and I'm just like, well, can this get over with?
If you're going to kill a vampire, if you blow them up with a fucking tanker truck, that's the way to do it. I thought that was a proper death for a terrible person, a terrible guy. That sends him on his way. But I think they were like, well, you can only have one or two explosions. Okay, we're going to save it. We're going to save it for the end. We want a big explosion at the end. That was a great way to send that character off.
And the bar sequence, I think, really works very, very well at centering this film, because you don't need to follow them from town to town to town wreaking havoc. You get the idea. This is kind of what they do every night. The way, not just the way it's acted, not just the way it's directed, not just the way it's photographed, but just the amount of loving care and time that is dedicated to it at the center of this film is to be admired. We can enjoy it from beginning to end as a full performance, as a fully realized and edited sequence, as a chance to enjoy the beautiful music of Richard Marx. No, okay, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
How dare you? I think if I had seen this movie when it first came out, that whole barroom sequence would have messed me up. Because, I'm a sensitive kid. I didn't like violence or anything like that, which is, appropriate for a child. God, I would have been 10 when it came out. So yeah, that would have really messed me up. But it was so creepy. And like the whole time when they come in, and it's just unsettling from the beginning. They're going to do something. You're not quite sure what or how, but it's going to happen. And the people are in the bar and they see they all get the vibe of these people aren't right. There's something bad is about to happen. And then when he cuts the waitress's throat, it was so just matter-of-factly that he did it. He just, I don't need the beer, just the glass. And then he just cuts her throat. And it's like, fuck. And then shit goes down. It's amazing.
Well, I mean, the bar, it's a rough place. I mean, that you're not just, even when they mess Caleb up with a shotgun to the belly, like they're prepared for things to go wrong, but not as prepared for what walked in. And so I like that they're kind of like, some of the other people in this bars might be criminals as well. They're just not on the same level as the vampires.
Yeah.
And not immortal.
That too. I mean, if somebody comes in
like in terms of questionable characters, like, yeah, they're, they're looking for a fight. They're just not going to be able to finish it.
Yeah, it's a fight that they did not expect. And so if somebody comes in and they're awful enough to creep out the hardened criminals, that's pretty bad. Although I was amused by the young guy that he lets go at the end. Like, he didn't look like he belonged there at all. Like, why is this guy here? He looks like this clean-cut young guy who's just playing pool, and clearly it's almost dawn. Why is he out this late? Why is he in this place right now, you know?
And why is a bar open at 5 a.m.? But we don't ask these questions when a film's well done. When a scene's well done, we ask these questions when we're not enjoying the film. Suddenly, this is a plot hole, and that is a plot hole.
It's the bar and the after bar and the morning place all rolled into one. It's the place where people of that ilk go. And it is a good question. Is that guy that he let go, is that another moral choice or not? Who knows? Um,
Yeah, I think it was a moral choice. He'd been showing the whole time he didn't want to kill anybody. He had to survive, but he didn't want to. Like, he wasn't able to kill the truck driver, and so May killed him. And then this young guy, he had the chance. He could have done it, and he's just like, I can't do this.
And I think that's Bill Paxton's real crowning glory is in that scene, where he can go full Bill Paxton. It's like Bill Paxton on 2 bumps of cocaine and 20 cups of coffee, And yeah, when he died in 2017, I even was surprised at just the outpouring of grief because I had not really thought of him as more than just kind of a character actor in films like this and Apollo 13. But there was something about him because the amount of grief and mourning at his passing at the age of 61, which is young to me. I'm 55, so of course I think 61 is young. There's something about, he had a personality that transcended these tiny little parts that he got throughout his, not just for working with James Cameron, but in these films there's something magnetic about Bill Paxton that people really responded to his death, which, like I said, really surprised me. Another actor like that who passed away recently and had just this huge outpouring, which surprised me, was Harry Dean Stanton. Same sort of thing. There really was like a cult following for people like Paxton and Stanton, and it's a wonderful kind of thing that the art of cinema gives us, is these just kind of character actors that we follow and like, oh, if that guy's in the movie, it's going to at least have that guy in the movie. So at least that'll be good.
Yeah, I think when, someone's like a character actor or you're familiar with their work, I think it's more prevalent now with TV actors. If you grow up with somebody or you see them week to week, there's a fondness or familiarity where you're like almost feel like you know them because they're a part of your day-to-day life or at least weekly life. And Bill Paxton always had that charm. I feel like Kevin Bacon has that charm as well. And like recently, Diane Keaton passed away, and she had that kind of like charm as well, where it's like, oh, she's in a new movie, I got to check it out, like, because there was something special about her and about Bill Paxton. So, and you brought up Harry Dean Stanton, he's someone, as well, where you could throw a rock and oh yeah, he was in that movie also. And just it's nice when the fans grow up with the talent where like you want to see what they do because you're invested in their talent and their skill.
This film, I don't think, gets the love that it deserves. And a lot of that, I don't think, is the fault of the film or even the film goers. At the time this film came out, it was a very difficult film to find. They only had less than, I think, 300 prints out, where, for instance, a film like Fright Night had almost 2,000 prints out there. A film like Lost Boys, which came out a little bit earlier than this, had, I think, 1,200 different theaters were playing it. This was playing in less than 300 theaters because the production company that made it, DEG, our good old friend Dino De Laurentiis' group, was going bankrupt, put absolutely no money behind it. And that's it. That was all the advertising that it got, that and a movie poster. So by the time this made it around to where I live, because there were so few prints, it was, I think this came out on October 8th, 1997. It was the week of Thanksgiving, and this was playing at the second run drive-in theater where I would normally go to watch kung fu movies dubbed, or like your really B and C tier horror films, the kind of stuff that AEI and Roger Corman were producing, and that's how you got to see this film. And you got to imagine a drive-in theater showing a film in November in Michigan. You just think about, they're not expecting a big crowd. So I mean that was how low it got. It really didn't have that much of a run on premium movie channels either. It only played for a week on Showtime, and they only played it twice on HBO. The reason this got word of mouth at all was through videotape rentals, and it was almost entirely word of mouth with no advertising. Like I say, nothing with the premium movie channels. But when DEG went bankrupt, nobody even knows who. I wanted to have some clips from this film. I can't find who to get permission from because nobody knows who owns the rights to this film. That's how screwed up the distribution was for it.
I was going to ask you, Eric, if you remembered what poster you saw when you saw it at
That's
the
what I was
drive-in,
going to ask.
because have been different iterations over the years. And
I do distinctly remember the poster because that's why I went to go see it, and it was actually a very good poster. It was the one of the Severen of the Bill Paxton with his face half burnt. It had bullet holes behind it with what made, and it was definitely airbrushed. It was a really good poster. I might, maybe I'll try and find it and use it for our episode artwork. But the way it was done, I distinctly remember, was it looked like actual sunlight was coming through the bullet holes, and the bullet holes were airbrushed in such a way that they actually looked like rips in the poster. It was a really, really good poster.
I think it's a striking image. I don't think it promotes the movie well, and I don't think at the time it promoted it well to an audience that maybe wanted to see either a Western vampire romance. Like, it is funny how they marketed it later, where they tried to capitalize on the popularity of Twilight, and so they were leaning into a similar poster where it's like, the young people's faces and the vampires are relegated to the background. But if just you're going off that one image of Bill Paxton all torn up, that reads differently. That doesn't read vampire to me. So I think there might have been a misstep with that poster going out first.
But I don't know if that was their first poster. It worked perfectly for where I saw the film, which was at a second-run drive-in theater where guys who like to punch each other in the guts sit in their pickup trucks and watch B-level horror movies and dubbed kung fu Hong Kong imports. In fact, that was the perfect poster for it because it suggested, hey, this is violent, somebody catches on fire, and there are bullets.
Well, I was going to say, this film found its audience on home video, and we all know a very famous filmmaker who got his start working in a video store. Anyone want to say his name?
Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, love or hate him, he is a big fan of this movie. And when he had a chance to sit down with Katherine Bigalow, the only movie he wanted to talk about was Near Dark. And so, in terms of his fanboy quality, I think like a lot of people like him saw this movie on home video, and it has a special place. But I kind of love, she's, after winning the Academy Award, that he would sit down with her and be like, hey, can we talk about your little vampire Western? I think that's funny.
Not little to him. So the poster and the drive of your drive-in movie theater drew you to it, Eric. And Nicole, I was trying to figure out the time in your life. You're saying flipping channels at night. Was it in this little bit of time that it had distribution? Because you were,
No, I'm trying to think when I might have seen it, and I can't recall specifically. I actually own a DVD, but it's been years, but I wouldn't have seen it when I was too young. So it would have been something I maybe looked for when I was in college or something as a
So
movie.
it would have been long after, because this played on HBO and Showtime in 1988.
she's too young then.
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan was still president when I saw that. I didn't watch it on HBO, but I saw that it was scheduled on HBO, and I distinctly remember, because whatever time it was on HBO didn't mesh up exactly, and I just assumed, like every other film, it would be on HBO a million more times, and it never was. Because I did actually want to watch it again.
I was going to say there is something to finding a movie on, like, back when you were watching cable TV when that was special, where like it would come on sparingly. Like I remember seeing the film Freeway and like little Reese Witherspoon in this crazy kind of like killer action movie. I was like, what the fuck is this with her and Kiefer Sutherland? And it's when you discover a movie, when you just, I mean, it means more. It's special. And so like I think I want more people to discover this movie. It's a shame that it's like it's harder to find good qualities and that the DVD is so expensive and that in the age of streaming that movies are in like movie jail. Like I would love more people who are interested in horror or just genre in general finding these like obscure, more lost movies and like giving them the love that they deserve.
Yeah, get yourself a hard copy. That's the way to go. You know, physical media.
Yeah, not yet.
That's the future.
I take great comfort in a really nice DVD with beautiful artwork that someone paid their rent because they were paid a decent wage to make it. And so I'm surrounded by my DVDs, but I take great comfort.
And you know it'll still be here a week from now that it's not going to get deleted from your DVD collection the way something that you buy on streaming might.
Oh, that's a hard truth. The only other thing is like the machine you need to run it has to work if you get the right copy or the right thing. But
that's a very important point. We need to make a very, very important point here for anybody listening. There are so many just crappy prints of this film, and I actually started watching one of them, and I was like, absolutely not. I'm not experiencing the film this way because it'll actually ruin it for me. Because all of these things that we're talking about in terms of the painterly compositions and the use of the telephotos to make the sun an antagonist and the things like that are so dependent on the beauty of this film's images that when you're watching it on a crappy print with the sides cut off or with the heads cut off or with the colors blown out, and if you can find this on physical media, that's absolutely the way to go because this is an absolutely gorgeous film. Watching a pirate print of this on YouTube, you are not watching the same film that Nicole, Erin, and I did. And unfortunately, I think you are watching the same film. Jen, isn't that the one that you unfortunately watched?
It is the version I watched, and I was aware that it was bad and suspended that part of my belief or snottiness. Like I could see that the color was gorgeous and the framing was gorgeous, and I could accept that those things were ruined by the version that I watched for sure. And it did make me, finishing it, reading about it, talking about it does make me want to get a physical copy and watch it in a different way for sure. Because it does matter. They worked really hard at this and did some really cool stuff. Yeah, I mean, I keep thinking about, we talked a lot about the bar scene, but the scene in the hotel bungalow, and they shot, I think it's 40 days, which is funny and biblical, but 40 nights. All the night scenes are night for night. And then they shot the film at the scene at the hotel bungalow with the shootout and shot at daytime, and so all of them were being like they had flipped their schedule. They had all been staying awake at night, and it was hard for them to be awake in the day that they did that. And that was all, like Nicole had talked about, they built the structure, they put the plants in the wall to have the sunlight burst through with the bullet holes, and the visual of that is gorgeous. And even the cinematographer Adam Greenberg just talked about, again, the storyboards that Katherine Bigalow made, the visual ideas that she gave him about what was going to happen, her vision about how that was going to happen. And he was like so excited with, I mean, every idea he had, he's like, I can work with this. I know what I'm going to do. I know how I can bring her vision to life. Seeing all that in a crisper, appropriately framed, appropriately color balanced version will be gorgeous. And being able to hear the soundtrack, which is a huge part of this film, the soundtrack and the sound that Tangerine Dream in a better version will be.
Don't forget Richard Marx. Naughty, naughty. You should know. Tease me. Take it easy. Love and squeeze me. I'm a naughty, naughty guy.
It fits.
Poetry.
It fits with the creepiness of lots of the predatory nature that these creatures have.
Again, Friends don't let friends listen to Richard Mark or start smoking at the age of 7 or however old that kid is in this movie.
Homer.
You mentioned Fright Night earlier. I think I only saw part of the original Fright Night, but I did see the remake because my ex-husband liked it. What stood out to me in that is how the women in the remake, the 2011 version of Fright Night, were basically property. Like, none of them had any agency. They were just there to be fought over by, the main guy and the vampire. In Near Dark, the women do have agency. Like May, as you can see at the beginning, when he's hitting on her, you can see her turn it around. You can see she's a predator. She is in control of what she's doing. Even though they have the love story and she's trying to help him, she still makes the choices herself and doesn't have to do anything. She's actually treated like a fully rounded character. I want to throw that out there to discuss because that's so important, I feel like, and especially with a female director.
You bring up a very good point, though, Erin. And I don't want to be negative about this, but a lot of the performances are superior, I think, to the actual characters. For instance, you talk about agency. What is Jenette Goldstein's Diamondback's agency in this film? Or would you even notice if she wasn't in it, except for the big blonde hair?
I would push back and say that Diamondback plays an important part in their chosen family of vampires, and even how they get Homer in the mix is that was a choice that she wanted someone to take care of other than Jesse. She still had like a lingering human need, and it took the form of Homer. That's what makes him so tragic, because she still babies him, and there's times when she's babying him, and then Jesse is like, "Get it together, old man," and treats him like an adult, and he's constantly in this kind of code shifting back and forth. But I do think the character of Diamondback plays an important role in their makeshift family, because even though she's quietly observing, the character's name comes from like a rattlesnake, so she is like a predator just waiting to strike, and so that might come off as passive, but she's still very dangerous.
I feel like having a female director also, as Eric was saying, the screenplay is not the same as what actually occurred in the film. It's just like with the actors and their choices, with the director making the choices that she made the characters so much better than they could have been otherwise.
Jen, anything before I shit on everything real quick?
It is true that even the little sister has some agency. They are deliberate. It's nice. I mean, it's not. I wonder if it passes the Bechdel test as females.
When you compare this to Back to the Future or Howard the Duck.
Oh, no, I mean,
I don't think if you compare this to Persona or The Organizer or anything you would call this agency for any of the female characters. I'm going to go to Bigelow here for a moment, who said that she considered this film's most important message the importance of the nuclear traditional family. And she said that the vampires represented society's collapse because of the lack of fathers.
Well, even if that was her intent, I think what's wonderful about art is that people can have their own interpretation. And so she might have intended us to take in the information one way, but looking at the vampires and looking at their core belief system, even though they do have kind of a makeshift family, they are part of like a fringe network of society that so much so we're like, this is taking place in like Reagan era. And even now it's topical. It's like the put upon Southern gentleman that feels neglected in society. Like there's so much white supremacy currently going on in the world where there's this pushback and, people feeling put upon and neglected even. And then
because white people are actually the real victims of racism.
Whether she meant to or not, she was like creating these vampires are a symbol for a subset of society that might feel like they're overlooked, but they've been given a lot of privilege. And so their rage is misguided and put in the wrong directions. But I think it's still topical now, and we're in kind of like a divisive time politically. So I would still encourage people to look at this film and then like look at the vampires and who would you speculate they are embodying in today's current society. So.
And I would say I think Katherine Bigalow is full of shit when she says that. I don't think she believes a word of that. Why would you make a vampire film, put this much love and care into the vampires, and not expect your audience to sympathize with the vampires all the way through the film after creating a 90-minute film where all you are doing is following them on a road trip. This was political cover your ass after the fact.
No,
Be-
honestly, I think if she actually stated that in some kind of interview, we should take her for her word. And I think art can exist and be reinterpreted by different people. So, I mean, I wouldn't.
Well, but here's what I didn't say is this was something that she said 20 years after this film was made, when she became an Academy Award winning director and made Hurt Locker, which was had a pro-military stance, and Zero Dark 30, which said that the only way we caught bin Laden is by violating human rights and torturing people. And so I think she was saying it to appeal to her newer audience 20 years later, actually more than 20 years later. I don't think she believed that. There's no way she created this film saying, I'm going to highlight the importance of the nuclear family, and ended up with this. A does not connect to B that way, in my mind.
Well, when I look at the Hurt Locker as the movie she won the Academy Award for, and that's following somebody who does not fit into society and actually pushes back and challenges and runs into danger and is more similar to the vampires in this film. I had some problems with Zero Dark 30, but in terms of a complicated anti-hero, Jeremy Renner in Hurt Locker is an interesting character study because as either an example of the modern man or a person trying to navigate where they belong in society.
Well, I think there's a lot of Bill Paxton Severen in him.
Yeah.
I think it's also a little deeper character because he's using sarcasm to mask some deeper inefficiencies within him. I do want to say this for Bigalow. I think she is one of the top 10 working directors. She has a new movie coming out in a few days, and I can't wait to see it. It's going to be premiering on Netflix, I think, October 25th. And I thought her last film, Detroit, which didn't do well at the box office, but I thought it was, having grown up outside of Detroit, excellent retelling of the 1967 riots there. And again, wonderfully directed. And if I had a script and I wanted to hire somebody based on who's going to choose the right lens, the right angle, and get the best performances out of a cast, Katherine Bigalow would have to be on my top 5 to 10 list of people that I'd want. I think she's just one of the most truly talented directors working out there. Do I think her politics are 100% something that I agree with? No, but I definitely have her over for dinner, and we could have that conversation.
Well, I think with Zero Dark 30, I feel like that movie was made so quickly and then information was redacted that she wasn't able either to put in or that came out later. And so that movie exists in terms of fanfic of real events. And it doesn't really, it didn't work for me. But I don't know. When I think of her filmography, the films I go back to and revisit and rewatch and enjoy, I love Point Break and I love Near Dark. It's blending genres. And again, it's picking the right cast to elevate the characters, because Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves, that worked really well. And when they tried to remake it, it just did not work. But also, I like how she directs action. I thought Detroit had some very impressive sequences in it. As a movie, it's a hard watch, but it's a hard watch because it's difficult subject matter. So I do like her other more fantasy-based, crime thriller and then vampire genre-bending Western movie where she gets to play a little more. This movie is a fantasy, and it's kind of like a wonderful dark fantasy where these characters existed in this space and time. The fact that it's in the 80s where you had all these different things going on, I think it still works very well, and I think her artistry shines through, and she elevated the script.
I'm not saying all of her movies are great movie. I wouldn't recommend watching a Blue Steel or A Weight of Water, but there's not a single film that she's made that isn't extremely well directed. And there isn't a film that she's made that doesn't have really good performances in it. As a historically important director, and I'm not just talking about the first woman to win an Academy Award for Best Picture, I'm talking about historically important just in cinema, over and above what she's done for the female gender in cinema. Her innovation in the use of, you mentioned Point Break, of the moving telephoto lens. You would not have things like the television show Law order. Had it not been for Bigelow's innovations, you would not have things like the spy movies with Ben Affleck, not Ben Affleck, the other one, Matt Damon.
Born
Yeah,
Identity?
the Born Identity movies. You would never have had. You would have never had that style of filmmaking had Bigelow not experimented with it originally when she was working on a lower budget on these more commercial genre pieces where she could do so, and the innovation that she did in terms of how she used these large, like 300 millimeter lenses, and would be able to put them on the go to create this kind of, because before Bigelow, everything was done to steady that lens, because the last thing you wanted was any kind of a jumpiness, and she moved jumpiness she made it a character in the film, and she made the jumpiness of the camera and the flatness of the background and the fact that the camera could be so far away from the action and yet bring you up close. She is an incredibly innovative figure for cinema alone, over and above what she did for the other people of her gender who were in cinema. So, I mean, she's an extraordinarily historically important person. That doesn't mean every one of her films is great. They're not. I don't think anything that's wrong with The Weight of Water has anything to do with the way it's shot or Sean Penn's performance or any of those type of things. That all comes down to something that she didn't have control of, which is, of course, she was picked and hired to direct somebody else's script for that one. And I'm just using that as an example. But I also think if you are a film nerd the way that some of us in this room is, the Weight of Water is worth a watch just for how its technical competence. All right, we're going to start wrapping this up. But before we do, let's talk about the ending of this movie, which I think is not just the weakest part, but I think is actually kind of a gem. But let's take a vote. Who thought that the idea that you can just kind of try out being a vampire for 4 years and then get a pint of blood pumped into you was believable? If it's that simple not to be a vampire anymore, doesn't that kind of take the stakes away of the film that you just watched? That's my vote. We'll start with you, Nicole.
It's a source. When you were talking about a sore spot in the script, it stands out to me as the weakest link. I wish there was a different ending. They set up that the dad has the medical knowledge. He's a vet, and it's just such a ridiculous sequence.
Where did he get the blood from?
Well, his dad sits down next to him and he does the transfer.
How did we know that it was the same blood type for May?
Yeah, well, it's so silly. It's actually one of,
and these aren't questions we asked earlier in the film, are they, Nicole? Because there are other things that are plot holes in this film, but you're not saying they don't ruin the film for you the way something like this does.
Yeah, I don't care
how the difference.
At the bar, that doesn't bother me. But yeah, a blood transfusion stood out as like, oh, okay. It's just the fact that it ends on such a happy note. It's one of her more happy ending movies, surprisingly. And I actually wish it leaned a little more darker and more somber.
There is supposedly a lost ending out there where they filmed where Sarah walks out in the sunlight and her hands start burning. I've never seen the actual shot, but I know people who have, and that was supposed to be the ending.
And she edited that out. Katherine made the choice. I heard that somewhere. She made the choice to cut that out and go with the freeze frame ending, which is also another odd ending.
I hate freeze frame endings, but they're so 80s, so many of them, but I do. I say this probably too often on this because I'm not a film critic. I would rather talk about the 91 minutes I liked about this film than the minute and a half I did.
There's the moral tale, there's the arc, there's the growth of Caleb, there's your romance that even Nicole, you cheered for the romance. She gave us a romantic, happy ending.
I didn't. Goddamn kids swapping their freaking saliva and just not right. And they're just when I was their age. Get off my lawn.
You would have been happy with the burning sister. Both, because we could have gotten both. We could have gotten a romantic ending with the nemesis of the burning sister, and then they would just transfuse her and it would be fine. But
I mean,
which again, there's no stakes. If I can just try out being a vampire the same way somebody tries out heroin for a while and then just get off before they get addicted, what are the stakes then?
Well, at the start, Caleb wants something more in his life, and that takes the form of May. I could have seen him sacrificing himself and ending up with the girl, and they end up together as immortals. So she's no longer alone, but he has to say goodbye to his family. Like, there's, at one point he's willing to sacrifice himself for his sister. He's trying to win her back. He's trying to save the day. So just wrapping it up in a little bow where everyone's okay is a little too easy for me. That's all.
And that's why I say it's the making of this film that makes the film great, not its storyline, because what you just described is the exact same plot for Teen Wolf.
And I like
Just saying.
I like Teen Wolf. It's just it's a different tone, different movie. So staying on this movie.
Just saying. I think this is just the frame on which Bigelow was able to paint a masterpiece, as opposed. I don't think looking at the story, looking at the inverted commas romance. Damn kids. I think it comes out of the performances. I think the creation of the characters, the believability of the characters, all comes down to how the film is executed. I don't look at this as a well-written film, not just for the ending.
I also think I heard somewhere that Katherine Bigalow said that in the writing of it, the idea of the blood transfusion, they projected it farther, that Bram Stoker had written about bloodletting, right, as a possible way to cure the vampirism or to deal with things. And that she and her co-writer had decided to go down the road of what I think she even credited it to herself, of the idea that how about if bloodletting could help, maybe a full transfusion could go even farther in curing it, just for what it's
Okay,
come. It comes from some source material, and other people reference that as well. Oh, I hear the
that just creates another plot hole, because then, of course, whether it's Bill Paxton's Severen, whether it's Lance Henriksen's Jesse Hooker, these are people who we've found have been through war, where there's plenty of bloodletting, blood transfusions. Why hasn't anyone cured vampirism so far?
It's all true. I mean, are these even, we go back to, are
It's
they vampires? Are they vampires or not? They don't say that they're vampires. Are they their own unique? Because every other version of vampire we've seen has vampirism much more. I mean, there's the gothic aspect, but there's also the successful aspect, right? They know the future. They know centuries of the past. So they are wealthy. They have a home. They have a castle. They have servants. They have luxury in a way that these
okay,
vampires don't.
I think the makers of this film would say, well, then that's the plot hole, because how can they do that if the banks are only open during the day?
They
How
have
did they get out?
servants that
How
do
did they
their
do?
thing.
How did they get the servants? Did they advertise for them? You get what I'm saying. But the other thing is, that is what I love about this film, is these are working class vampires. Well, even lower working class vampires, and I love that. And they're dirty.
They're basically carnies.
Yes, like Todd Browning's Freaks. I love it. And when Severen catches fire and we see that he's healed, he's still got the soot on his face, because nobody ever takes a bath. I love that about this movie. I love that you can taste the dust going down the road. That's absolutely what I love about this movie, and it is that combination of the wild old west and the character of the desert at night, with the nemesis of the sun, with the horror genre, and it blends that all perfectly. But again, all of that is visual. None of that is in the dialogue. The dialogue is mostly, this could be John McClane in Die Hard. It's mostly just 80s smart-ass one-liners, most of which sound to me like they were improvised. I think this is proof yet again that a film is as good as its execution, not necessarily as good as its screenplay. That you can take weaker material, and if it's done at an extremely high level, you can have an extremely good film.
They actually grew a mosquito to have him kill on screen, to be biting him, because they needed to make sure that he wouldn't get any kind of disease or anything. And it was
to keep from infecting the whole cast. Yeah.
Well,
Did they name the? Do you think they named the mosquito?
I don't know,
6 months. They raised it for 6 months.
That's their little baby, and then he squashes it on screen. Do you think there was somebody who like fed it honey every day and loved that mosquito, and then just had to watch it die?
Well, my point being that like the follow through of like that one shot that's only on there for a second was so important to her that she spent the 6 months to make sure that they would have a mosquito ready for that scene. I think shows her kind of like obsessive attention to detail in what she wanted to portray and show.
It's interesting to put all those things in perspective. And for me, I will admit my ignorance. I didn't realize I like Point Break. I've watched Point Break more than once, that she directed that and that there are similar actors in it and the similar camera use. And I could see that in watching this in hindsight, but
Jen,
I didn't know
Jen,
that going into it.
you like Point Break because Lori Petty is in it. Just be honest.
I just sent you that AI meme over this week. I'm not gonna say I didn't like. There are not other reasons I like Point Break. It's true. I
It can
and
be one of them. It's okay.
it's all. I mean, I may have seen this movie. I think I would have realized that I may have been swayed by May and her seductiveness in watching this movie. So yeah, there's that. I can admit
Uh,
all that for sure.
I'm sorry, any actress that age is 12 years old as far as I'm concerned.
No, I get that, and I understand that as well. And we could talk about age gap and inappropriateness and when this gets
Oh,
weirder and
I'm
weirder.
not from an
But
appropriate level. It's just like anytime anybody pretty much under 30, they're like 12 to me. It's just the way it is.
when you
Okay,
saw this, you were of an
17.
appropriate age, right? And she was
Yeah,
attractive, I'm
and
guessing, and that would
she
have been true
seemed
for me
weird.
as well.
No, you know what? No, she seemed weird to me. I distinctly remember because of us having a conversation of, to be crude, like, would you fuck her type of a conversation afterwards. And I was like, I don't know. She seemed a little psychotic with the whole, the sky sounds bright and the little poetry and all that. Girls like that, I don't know. I'd be afraid she'd cut my dick off. With what was my answer at the time. She came off as just a little too weird for me. And you know what? My instinct would have been right because
I
she is a
appreciate your candor to
vampire.
that. She warned you. She waved the red flags for real.
Bite, die, my two favorite words. And Nicole, so what are your final thoughts on Near Dark?
Still love this movie. I hope more people continue to watch this movie, discover this movie. It should be in your spooky rotation for Halloween. So please give this little movie a chance. I don't care if they don't call themselves vampires. I'm calling them vampires, and I really enjoyed this film.
Jennifer, what were your final thoughts on Near Dark?
Nicole, I appreciate your thoughts. It has been pulled into my rotation as a multi-genre. You got romance, you got western, you got action, you got vampire, you got horror. You have some masterclass studying of making films, which I think is fascinating. So, yes, it makes me want to get a nice hard copy of this and watch it under good quality circumstances, and review it and talk about it. I think whether they're vampires or not, it's interesting. It's somewhere along the way they talked about them being nocturnal nomadic wolves. And I really liked that view of them. And when we talked about that with the whole dynamic of who's in charge or not. I mean, wolf packs really are a family-based structure, not necessarily dominance, aggression, and there's like a breeding pair that's sort of the alphas in the pack, and we have that, and that they have this nomadic hunting group, a family, quote unquote, right? So that family dynamic in the film is interesting. I think it could be a film, it's one of those ones like you could get lots of people to watch it, right? Like you might be able to pull someone into it who, hey, let's sit down and watch this movie. We get a little of a lot of things. We get romance and actions and dark and light. So yeah, if you can wait through the slow parts, I recommend that you do, because they are writing their story and building their storyline, and it's worth a watch and it's worth a rewatch, and it's certainly been worth the discussion. I feel like we could talk about it more, and its connection through the spiderweb network of the history of cinema is fascinating. And that's been really fun. And I appreciate the opportunity to get to talk about it and reflect it. And I appreciate Nicole asking me to watch it many times and then inviting me here to watch it and discuss it with you, Eric and Erin, and the community here. So I'm going to ask again. Let's go for dialogue on films, which I love. So please, if you're listening to this, write anywhere that you have the opportunity to engage in a dialogue about this film and your thoughts. Please do. It will make this more fun. So chat away on the internet, people. Let's go.
Thank you, Jennifer. Erin Brown, your final thoughts on Near Dark.
This is another film that I probably never would have watched if not for this podcast, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's not going to go in my top 10 favorite of all time films, but it was a slow start, but then it ended up being a really fun, enjoyable film. And Bill Paxton was amazing. He was the highlight of the film for me, which is silly because he was so horrible, but he was so good at being horrible. It was amazing. I didn't really care for the love story, but that's definitely a me thing. But I do have to say, where are my asexual vampires? Why are there never any asexual vampires? I would love to see that. So I guess I better write that film.
Erin, I would love to see your version of an asexual vampire. So please start writing that, because I think there is room in the world for that story.
Awesome. I'm going to have to do that.
I don't know that there aren't ever vampires that way, and I need to give that's going to make me open my mind to that, but we certainly need more ace stories across the board and ace representation, which
Yes,
we
we
don't
do.
get enough of.
We
So
definitely
let's
do.
go.
Awesome. Yeah. So, yeah, I thought it was great. I had a good time watching it.
Erin, where can people find you on the internet? And are there any upcoming events you want to talk about?
Yeah, you can find me at on Blue Sky at Toad Puppy, and on YouTube at Pizza Horse Productions. And a friend of the podcast, Sav Rogers, has a new film that he's trying to fundraise. It's called Pancake Skank. It's a fantastical sci-fi comedy following the mythical anti-heroine Pancake Skank and her meek sidekick Loverboy as they wreak havoc in the world of almost always nighttime by robbing diners of their flapjacks, stumbling on what it truly means to be known and to be a friend along the way. It looks like an amazing film. I'm looking forward to it, and Sav is incredible. I've seen some of his other films at festivals and stuff. He knows what he's doing. So, yeah, you can go to pancakeskank.com to support his film.
And we'll have a link for that in the episode description. Nicole de Meneses, where can people find you on the internet? And how is fundraising going for your sapphic vampire film, Last Bite?
Well, we're still fundraising on GoFundMe. So you guys, if you want to give it a look, or every little bit helps, you can look up Last Bite, a sapphic vampire film that bites back. Give people the quick log line. A vampire who has lost her taste for blood hires a call girl to reignite her thirst. It's a chamber piece, takes place all in one night, and set in San Francisco. So I'm still very passionate about telling this story. I think we need more sapphic genre films, and we can't just have The Hunger. I mean, it'd be fun to discuss that film on this podcast, because when you say lesbian vampires, that's the first film that comes.
Episode 7.
And so we need more sapphic genre content, and I intend to participate and continue that journey. You can follow my work at Dark Rainbow Films. We're making this film this year, so if you can help, we're at 60% for our goal. We're hoping to film at the start of the new year. So,
thanks, Nicole, and we'll have the link for the Last Bite GoFundMe page also in the episode description. Jennifer, where can people find you and the Gilbert Baker Film Festival online?
Gilbert Baker Film Festival.lgbt is our home website. We're on all the social medias. We're on Instagram as Gilbert Baker Film Fest, and you can find the link tree in there to find us all other places, and you can find me through there as well. I do want to put a shout out. I agree, Sav Rogers is a great storyteller. Help them out with what they're doing and all the other filmmakers they support. And I will give the same shout out to Nicole de Meneses, that Nicole is building a world that they want to see in filmmaking, in supporting other filmmakers, but also making their own opportunities. And please, 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 if you have it in you to throw something Nicole's way towards making Last Bite, please do. I really want Nicole to be given the opportunity to make this feature film at a budget that they deserve, which is even higher than what they're asking for. And if you want to see some of Nicole's work, it's available. Dead in Love is available on Amazon to rent or buy, and I think that's a film that deserves a watch. It's a good film to enjoy, and it's a surprise film. I think it will let you learn more about Nicole de Meneses. And thanks for the opportunity to be on this podcast and talk about films with you guys. It's been a delight. I enjoy it. Thanks.
Well, we hope to have you back for future episodes. If you want to follow me, I'm at ETROMMATER on the artist formerly known as Twitter. Also at ETROMMATER on Letterboxd. I went and set up a list with all of the films that we've done over the last 3 years with links to the episodes on Letterboxd. There aren't written reviews there because I don't want stars or likes. I just simply put that at the request of Letterboxd users who don't want to have to go to a different website to find our old episodes. So that is there. But I refuse to actually update any more than the name of the film and the link. I'm not a film critic. I know I keep saying that, but I'm not a film critic. I'm a film lover. I would like to also announce that, unfortunately, great friend of the show, Mark Redfield, did pass away. We'll be re-releasing the 6 episodes that he did for us here on World Cinema History. He's somebody who meant a lot to the show. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that almost exactly a year ago that I was going to stop making this show, and he was the one who talked me into switching over to the World Cinema History format and creating something that I could be proud of, as opposed to what we had been doing, which was a live show on Clubhouse, and that I just wasn't happy with the quality. So without him, there wouldn't be a World Cinema History podcast. Jennifer, I think I know you got to deal with Mark quite a bit. Any thoughts on his passing?
I was incredibly saddened to hear of it, and I'm moved to hear that he motivated you to change your show into the format that it is, because that is like Mark. He really did. People he came across, he would support them in what they wanted to do and help them with what they wanted to do with ideas or input. He was definitely a supporter and a cheerleader in that way, and he gave opportunities to people that I could see. It is. I'm moved in the fact that it to hear about it today, on the fact that we're talking about this film, because this film, to me, one of the things I was going to say about it, that it feels like memento mori, which is, literally from Latin, remember death, and that remember that you will die. And this film was that sort of tale, like a cautionary tale about that, or a thought or an impact about that every moment that you get in the daylight is precious. Every day that we wake up on this side of the grass and feel the daylight, and it's precious. And having that hammered home by Mark's passing today really is a little haunting, in a good and a bad way. It's a good memento mori, to think about. Help others with what they want to do what you want to do, right? Don't say no to yourself before someone does. Ask for what you want to do. Mark really was the person that sort of walked in some of that path. So it's very touching and appropriate in lots of ways, and eerily symbolic. And so, I'm gonna cheers to you, Mark. I'm gonna raise my glass, and I hope everybody does. Yeah. And keep remembering how precious life is and the time that we have. And we're all going to die. We have that all in common, but we all have the opportunity to make something of each day and the time we have on this side of the grass in the sunlight or the dark. So let's go. Let's do that. Thanks.
And Erin, Mark went into a coma a couple of weeks after you having gotten to meet him, or got to talk to him for the first time. And the one episode that he did, that you and he did together, he went into a coma almost immediately afterwards. And his being in a coma has kind of touched every episode of this podcast that you've been on, because of course ever since we did the Werner Herzog episode, um, in the background is, "Hey, how's Mark?" But I am so sad to lose him, but I am so glad that you got to at least work with him once, which is something a lot of people didn't get to have. So, yeah, it is. Um, yeah. But do you have any thoughts? I know you didn't know him all that well, but do you have any thoughts about on your brief work with him?
Um, I enjoyed the episode we did together. He seemed like a really nice person. I was very sorry to hear about his health problems and going into the coma and that he passed away. I would have liked to do more episodes with him. Um, there's a Jewish expression. I'm not Jewish, but I love this expression. May his memory be a blessing. I I feel that that's may his memory be a blessing for all of us.
Thanks, Aaron. Everybody, join us next week for. You know what? I'm not going to do a promo at the end. I'm just going to end it on that. Yeah, I think you did it. Yeah, just I think I'll just end on what Aaron said.